In the autumn of 1888, a shadow fell over the Whitechapel district of London. The city, already grappling with poverty and crime, found itself in the grip of a new kind of fear. A killer, dubbed Jack the Ripper by the press, was stalking the streets. The name Jack the Ripper itself evokes a sense of terror and mystery that has endured for over a century. The case, with its gruesome details and unsolved murders, continues to fascinate and horrify. The Whitechapel murders, as they are also known, remain one of the most infamous unsolved crime sprees in history. The story of Jack the Ripper is not just about the brutality of the crimes, but also about the social and political landscape of Victorian London. It exposes the stark inequalities and the dark underbelly of a society on the cusp of change. This essay delves into the infamous mystery of Jack the Ripper, exploring the historical context of his crimes, the victims, the investigation, and the enduring fascination with this unsolved case. The Victorian era, a period of great economic and industrial expansion in Britain, was also a time of stark social disparities. London, in particular, was a city of stark contrasts, where unimaginable wealth existed alongside abject poverty. Whitechapel, the district where the Ripper's crimes took place, was a notorious slum. Overcrowding, poverty and disease were rampant. For many of its inhabitants, life was a daily struggle for survival. The streets of Whitechapel were often dangerous, especially at night. Gaslight dimly illuminated the maze of alleyways and courtyards, providing ample cover for criminal activity. Prostitution, often a result of poverty and lack of opportunity, was widespread. It was within this environment, marked by desperation and deprivation, that Jack the Ripper's reign of terror would unfold. Jack the Ripper's victims were all women, and most, if not all, were prostitutes living and working in Whitechapel. These women, often marginalized and forgotten by society, became the focus of intense scrutiny and speculation as the murders gripped the city. While the exact number of victims remains debated, 5 women are generally considered to be canonical victims of Jack the Ripper: Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes and Mary Jane Kelly. These women, each with their own stories and struggles, became tragically linked by their untimely deaths. Their murders shocked the public and exposed the vulnerability of women living in poverty in Victorian London. Section 4. The modus operandi, a gruesome signature. The murders attributed to Jack the Ripper were notable for their brutality and the chilling precision with which they were carried out. The killer's modus operandi often involved slashing the throats of his victims, followed by abdominal mutilations. The graphic nature of the crimes, often described in gruesome detail by the press, sent shockwaves through Victorian society. The level of violence inflicted on the victims, particularly the mutilations, suggested a deep-seated rage and possibly a knowledge of anatomy. The Ripper's ability to kill and disappear into the labyrinthine streets of Whitechapel, seemingly at will, further fueled the public's fear and fascination with the case. The killer seemed to vanish into thin air, leaving behind a trail of blood and terror. Section 5. Terror in the streets, public reactions and panic. As news of the murders spread, a wave of terror washed over Whitechapel and beyond. The public, both horrified and captivated by the crimes, devoured every detail published in the newspapers. The police, already struggling to maintain order in the overcrowded and impoverished district, faced mounting pressure to apprehend the killer. The investigation was hampered by false leads, public hysteria, and the difficulty of policing a dense and often uncooperative neighbourhood. The murders also exposed the social ills that plagued Victorian London. The plight of the poor, particularly women forced into prostitution to survive, became a topic of public debate. The Ripper's crimes served as a grim reminder of the vulnerability of those living on the margins of society. Section 6. The investigation, a race against time. The police investigation into the Jack the Ripper murders was one of the largest and most complex criminal investigations of the Victorian era. Detectives from Scotland Yard employed both traditional methods and new forensic techniques in their efforts to track down the killer. Despite their efforts, the investigation was plagued by dead ends and false leads. The Ripper, who seemed to vanish without a trace after each murder, became a phantom-like figure, taunting the police and terrifying the public. The the investigation was further complicated by the sheer volume of information, misinformation and speculation surrounding the case. The police received hundreds of letters, some claiming to be from the killer himself, but most proved to be hoaxes or the work of attention seekers. Section 7. Suspects and Theories. A century of speculation. Over the years, hundreds of individuals have been proposed as potential suspects in the Jack the Ripper case. Theories about the killer's identity range from the plausible to the outlandish, encompassing various professions, social classes, and even royalty. Some of the more well-known suspects include Montague John Druitt, a barrister who committed suicide shortly after the final canonical murder, Aaron Kosminski, a Polish immigrant with a history of mental illness, and Walter Sickert, a prominent artist who some believe incorporated clues to the murders in his paintings. Despite extensive research and numerous theories, no one has ever been definitively identified as Jack the Ripper. The passage of time, the loss of evidence, and the limitations of forensic science at the time make it unlikely that the case will ever be definitively solved.